Gregory, thank you so much for that introduction. It is truly an honor to be with you here tonight. I think I need to say a word about Gregory and about Zocalo and about their new partnership with Cal Humanities and Vanessa. For those of you who are newcomers to Zocalo, this is one of the most remarkable instances of civic engagement that I have seen in the United States. The way that, and you all are part of it, you all make it happen. And I think one of the things that we forget when we talk about big concepts like citizenship is that what it boils down to in the most simple way is whether or not you show up. It's kind of all it boils down to, is whether or not each one of us decides in ways large and small to show up. And Gregory and his remarkable team in creating this set of forums has held a space for us, but it's upon all of you here who've decided to show up on a very nice evening that helps give me hope for citizenship. I also want to thank our hosts here. This is an unusual and lovely setting to be doing a gathering like this here, the Petersen Automotive Museum. And I didn't grow up a total car nut, but I have always felt like there was something physically embodied in some of the cars you see around us here today of the American spirit. And it's, I think, rather apt that we should have a conversation tonight about American character, about the meaning and the content of our citizenship. Actually, knowing that we were coming here, I got to thinking about the ad that you might have seen that aired first during the Super Bowl, during halftime, actually, Clint Eastwood's much-noted ad for Chrysler, "It's Halftime in America." And the ad, which was talking about Detroit and talking about how Chrysler in particular picked itself up off the mat and came back and look out world for the second half, was, of course, a parable for the character and the spirit of the United States. And so I actually think it's quite fitting that we be here tonight. My topic this evening is citizenship in America and the meaning and the content of our citizenship. And I want to start actually not with high concept, but with a simple story. I host a gathering every year in Seattle, where I live, called the Guiding Lights Weekend, and it's a conference on the art of great and creative citizenship. And this year, one of the things that we did that was a real highlight of the gathering was we held for the first time at our conference a United States naturalization ceremony. So we invited, we had 500 attendees at this conference, but we also invited 30 immigrants from 17 nations around the world who that afternoon became naturalized citizens of the United States. And I don't know how many of you either ever or recently have been to a naturalization ceremony, but if you haven't, go to one, and if it's been a while, go to one, because there is nothing like it on earth. It's full of bureaucracy. You've got the Department of Homeland Security. You've got these kind of sort of cheesy videos that they play and everything, and it has all these things going against it. And yet, when you get down to the most basic roll call of nations represented by those immigrants, and you go one by one as they walk down the line and receive their certificate and stand before their family and their friends and get their photograph taken, one moment not a citizen, the next moment a citizen, even telling you about it right now, it gives me chill bumps. It's a very powerful thing. And we had that day after the ceremony itself a speaker who some of you may have heard of, a remarkable woman in her late 80s now named Gerda Weissmann Klein. Gerda Klein, as you may know, was a Holocaust survivor. She was just a young woman during the Holocaust, fled Poland, ended up in the camps. And Gerda's story is one of the most American stories there is. She was liberated from the camps by a man, a GI, who is the man she would later end up marrying. And she would emigrate to the United States because of this. And she ended up living a life that, as she says, she didn't cure cancer, she didn't win any major prizes, she didn't make a giant fortune. What she did simply was to live a life in freedom, and to live a life where she understood that freedom not only to be a writ of permission to do whatever she wanted, but actually a bill of responsibility that she was taking on. And indeed, quite well into her life, she wrote a very famous memoir of her life called All But My Life. But later in her life, she created an organization called Citizenship Counts. And it's a simple organization that hosts naturalization ceremonies all around the country and then gets conversations going with people who maybe haven't thought about this topic in a long time. and uses that moment as an occasion to prompt reflection and conversation about what it means to be American, what it means to call ourselves American. I tell you the story about Gerda Weissmann Klein not only because she's a remarkable exemplar of some of what I want to speak about tonight, but because she's actually in some ways the exception that proves the rule. The rule in American life today, as we sit here and gather here tonight, is that most of us, most of the time, don't think or talk about citizenship. Our conversations in this country about citizenship are rare, they're thin, they're tinny, they're polarized politically, and they are devoid of the ethical, spiritual, political content that when you think about what it is that our framers fought for and successive generations actually fought for, does none of them any justice. One of the things that I think is notable about citizenship itself and why I'm moved to both write about it and speak about it and why I want to talk about it tonight is that this is not a problem that's confined just to one side of the political spectrum, right? Nor is it confined to just one sector of American life. The decline of citizenship in the United States is the result of a lot of different forces converging. It's on the one side, the market becoming ever more dominant in the way that we think about our lives and think about our identities. And so the market tells us that we are but consumers and that things around us are but costs to be reduced. But on the other side as well, it's the state. It's the state that over the course of our lifetimes has encroached in smaller, tiny little ways where it becomes not a notable thing when, as happened in Seattle a year or two ago, there was an awful, violent beating of one teenager by another in a bus tunnel. And film captured two private security guards standing there watching the one teenager beat the other. Just standing there. And later when they were asked why they didn't intervene, they said, well, that wasn't our job. We're not government employees. We expected the police or someone from government to come in and break this up. And that little anecdote bespeaks another trend here, which is the ways in which so many of us, in ways that are often imperceptible, have subcontracted our civic responsibilities to the state. And so you have this convergence of forces, and it's a matter of both left and right. The left doesn't particularly talk these days about American citizenship. I think a lot of friends of mine on the progressive left, if they talk about citizenship at all, they like to think about it in terms of global citizenship, transcending the nation state. Why are you so parochial talking about America? Can't we get beyond this sort of stuff, right? And on the right, well, there is a lot of conversation about citizenship right now, but it's often in an exclusionary, mean-spirited, restrictionist kind of tone about who gets to claim it, about who gets to be barred from it, rather than what it actually is. And so the sum of all of this is that we have this deeply unsatisfying conversation about citizenship. And indeed, one of the things that's been in the public debate over the last couple of years is a plea from some on the right that because of the extent of illegal immigration, because of the existence of, and I put them heavily in air quotes, anchor babies out there, that what we ought to do to correct this is to repeal birthright citizenship. That what we ought to do is repeal the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which gives to anybody born on American soil citizenship as a matter of right. And so this idea that's out there, which is, to my mind, faulty on a constitutional basis and noxious on an ethical one, is out there. And you look at it, and what I decided to do in looking at it was not just get angry that there were people out there trying to repeal the Constitution in order to punish the children of undocumented immigrants. But what I decided to do was to do a little bit of a thought experiment. Well, let's think about that. All right, let's imagine, what if citizenship was not, in fact, a birthright? What if, in fact, just being here didn't guarantee you anything? And what if, in fact, that rule applied not only to immigrants, whether documented or not, but to every single one of us? What if every single one of us today had to earn our citizenship in some form or fashion? And that simply showing a birth certificate, which itself may be questioned, is not going to be sufficient to prove your citizenship. What if? And as a thought experiment, it's a kind of interesting thing to contemplate. Well, if not birth, then what? If not birth, then perhaps it ought to be service to community and to country. Perhaps it ought to be some measure of knowledge of what this country is and what it's about. Perhaps it ought to be some measure of